Hello there. It's late, isn't it? The world outside has finally quieted down, and the moon is casting long, soft shadows. Good. Settle in. Dim the lights, pull up a blanket, and let the day's worries dissolve into the background. We're going to travel somewhere far away tonight, not just in distance, but in time. I'm your sleepy historian, and I'm here to whisper a story from the past directly into the quiet of your room. Tonight, we're journeying to the banks of the Nile, to the sun-drenched land of Kemet, ancient Egypt. We're going to spend a day in the life of a princess. Now, before we begin, perhaps while you're getting comfortable, you might let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from tonight. It's always a quiet joy to see how far these stories travel in the dark. And of course, any gentle click of a like or subscribe, or any other form of quiet support, is always deeply appreciated, helping to keep these late-night lamps lit. But that's enough of that. Let's close our eyes and let the present fade. The air is growing warm, scented with lotus blossoms and the dry dust of millennia. Our story begins with the rising sun. The first light to touch the eyes of our princess is not the raw, brilliant glare of the Egyptian sun, but a soft, filtered glow. It streams through a high, unglazed window, a simple slit in the thick mud-brick wall, its light diffused by a fine linen screen. She lies not on a plush, feather-stuffed mattress, but on a low wooden frame, strung tightly with woven reeds or leather straps. Her pillow is no soft cushion, but a cool, curved headrest of polished wood or alabaster, designed to support the neck, and more importantly, to protect the elaborate hairstyle she would have worn even in sleep. Let's call her Meritamen, a common name meaning beloved of Amun. She is a daughter of the pharaoh during the height of the New Kingdom, perhaps the 18th or 19th dynasty. This is the Egypt of Tutankhamun and Rameses the Great, an era of unparalleled power and wealth. But her awakening is not a scene of cinematic grandeur. It is a quiet, ritualized process, managed not by her own whim, but by the hands of others. Before she is even fully awake, her chamber is filled with the soft footsteps and hushed voices of her attendants. These are not simply servants. They are high-born ladies, daughters of nobles, serving in the princess's household as a great honor and a political placement. They bring a small basin of cool water, a linen towel, and a simple breakfast, a piece of flatbread, perhaps some dates or figs, and a small cup of what the Egyptians called beer. This isn't the frothy brew we know today. It was a thick, nutritious, slightly fermented beverage, a staple of the Egyptian diet for everyone from the pharaoh to the tomb builder. It was their liquid bread. Once this simple meal is finished, the day's true work begins, the creation of the princess. Her life is a performance, and the costume and makeup are non-negotiable. She is led to her bathing chamber, a simple room with a limestone slab floor where servants pour water over her from large pottery jars. The water is scented with flowers or oils. She is washed with natron, a natural soda compound that lathers slightly and purifies the skin. After being dried with soft linen, the lengthy process of adornment commences. Forget the image of a woman choosing her own outfit. Her attire is dictated by the day's schedule, her rank, and the specific religious functions she might attend. The base of every outfit is linen, the ubiquitous fabric of Egypt. The quality, however, is what sets her apart. Her sheath dress is made of the finest, most diaphanous royal linen, so sheer it is almost transparent, pleated with meticulous precision. Over this, she might wear a tunic or a decorative shawl. Color is added through beading, embroidery, and most importantly, jewelry. A heavy, intricate broad color of gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and turquoise is carefully placed over her shoulders. Its weight is a constant, physical reminder of her status and her wealth. Bracelets adorn her wrists and upper arms, and anklets her feet. Then comes the face. This is not about vanity in our modern sense. It is about ritual, status, and magic. A lady-in-waiting grinds malachite for the green eyeshadow or galena for the black kohl. The kohl is applied with a small, smooth stick of ivory or wood, creating the dramatic, almond-shaped eye that is so iconic. This wasn't just cosmetic. The Egyptians believed the kohl had protective magical properties, warding off the evil eye, and it also had a practical purpose, reducing the sun's blinding glare. Her lips might be tinted with red ochre mixed with a little resin or fat. The final, and perhaps most crucial, element is the wig. An Egyptian royal's hair was typically kept short or even shaved for cleanliness and to prevent lice. The elaborate coiffures we see in art are almost always wigs, crafted from human hair, intricately braided, curled, and often interwoven with golden tubes or beads. The wig is heavy, hot, and cumbersome, but it is the crown she wears for her daily duties. Once the wig is secured, and a final drop of perfumed cone, made of scented animal fat, is placed atop it to melt slowly throughout the day and release its fragrance, Meritamen is no longer just a young woman. She is a living symbol of the divine order, a vessel of royal power, ready to perform her role. Her mourning is not her own. It is dedicated to duty, and in ancient Egypt, duty was inextricably linked with religion. As a princess, she is a key player in the divine theater that ensures the stability of the cosmos. Depending on her specific title, she might be a god's wife of Amun, a powerful and politically significant priestly role, or a chantress or sistrum player for a particular deity. Her first task of the day would likely be to attend a ritual, either in a private shrine within the palace complex or in one of the grand temples of Thebes. She would not be a passive observer. She would have been trained from a young age in the specific hymns, prayers, and gestures required. She would know how to shake the sistrum, a sacred rattle, its jangling sound thought to placate the guards and drive away evil forces. Her presence, along with that of other royal women, was essential. The pharaoh was the sole intermediary between the guards and humanity, but his family acted as his extensions, their collective participation reinforcing the divine mandate of his rule. This was her primary job description: professional daughter, deputy divinity. It was a role of immense privilege, but also of immense, repetitive, and deeply serious obligation. Following her religious duties, her education would continue. A royal princess was expected to be literate, a rare skill in the ancient world. She would spend time with a tutor, a high-ranking scribe, practicing her hieroglyphs on a wooden board coated with gesso or a flake of limestone known as an astrakhan. Papyrus was far too expensive for practice. She would not just learn to read and write. She would study religious texts, historical records, and administrative documents. This was practical training. She was not being educated for intellectual curiosity alone. She was being prepared for her future. She might one day rule as regent for a young son, or become the great royal wife to her brother or half-brother, a position of enormous influence and power. A queen in the new kingdom was not a mere consort. She was a partner in rule, with her own estates, her own staff, and her own political and religious responsibilities. Meritamen's lessons in mathematics and administration were training for her role as the CEO of a vast household and agricultural enterprise. She was, in essence, a highly privileged management trainee for the family business, and the family business was the nation of Egypt itself. The midday meal would be more substantial than breakfast. It would be taken in a private dining hall with her siblings and perhaps her mother, the queen. The air would be filled with the sounds of a harp or a flute, played by skilled musicians. The menu would showcase the wealth of the Nile Valley: roasted goose or duck, beef, a variety of breads and cakes sweetened with honey, and an abundance of vegetables like onions, garlic, and lettuce. Wine, from the flourishing vineyards of the Delta, would be served alongside the ubiquitous beer. But even this family meal was governed by strict etiquette and hierarchy. Seating would be arranged by rank, and conversation would be measured. This was less a casual family lunch and more a formal meeting of the board of directors. Here, the day's news might be discussed: reports from a military campaign in Nubia, the progress of a new temple construction, or the arrival of a diplomatic envoy from the Mitanni or Hittite empires. Meritamen would be expected to listen, to learn, and to speak only when appropriate. She was absorbing the language and concerns of power at the highest level. The afternoon brought a change of pace, but not necessarily freedom. This might be the time for her to attend her father, the pharaoh, in the great audience hall. Here she would be pure ornament, a silent testament to the king's virility and the continuity of his dynasty. She would stand or sit near the throne, perfectly composed, a beautiful and silent symbol of the state. It was a public relations exercise, thousands of years old. Her presence, in her fine linen and glittering jewelry, told the assembled courtiers, officials, and foreign dignitaries that all was well, that the guards were pleased, and that the royal bloodline was strong. It was likely incredibly boring. She would have to stand for hours in the heat, the heavy wig pressing down, the collar weighing on her shoulders, maintaining a serene expression while her father dealt with tedious matters of state. If she were not required at court, her afternoon might be spent overseeing her own affairs. A princess of high rank would have her own endowment of land, and its produce and income were hers to manage. She would meet with the stewards of her estates, reviewing accounts inscribed on papyrus scrolls. They would report on the grain harvest, the size of the cattle herds, and the production of the weavers and artisans in her workshops. She would have to approve expenses, resolve disputes, and ensure her enterprise was profitable. This was a sphere where she could exercise real authority, a microcosm of the power she might won in which she would wield as queen. This was not a hobby. It was a critical part of the royal economy. Alternatively, some of her time might be dedicated to the arts. She would practice her music, perhaps on a lap harp, or learn intricate ritual dances. These were not leisurely pastimes, but essential skills for a woman of her class, vital for both religious ceremonies and courtly entertainment. Was there any time for simple, unadulterated fun? Yes, but it was a carefully curated and supervised fun. She might stroll in the palace gardens, a lush, irrigated oasis of shade trees, flowering plants, and pools filled with lotus and tilapia. But she would not be alone. Her ladies-in-waiting would accompany her, their chatter a constant presence. She might play a game of Senet with a sibling, a popular board game that was also seen as a metaphor for the journey to the afterlife. The beautifully crafted game boards of ivory and ebony were common possessions of the elite. She would dote on her pets. The Egyptians were fond of animals, and a princess might have a cat, a dog of the slender Saluki type, or even a pet monkey, which would be adorned with its own little collar. These were moments of relative relaxation, but the walls of the palace were always there, a constant reminder of her gilded cage. The one aspect of her life that Hollywood loves to invent, romance, was almost certainly absent in the way we understand it. Her life was not her own, and her heart was a matter of state policy. There would be no secret trysts with handsome army captains or gifted young architects. Her every move was watched. Her value lay in her pure, divine bloodline. Consequently, her marriage would be a strategic decision made by her father. More often than not, the ideal husband was her own full or half-brother. This practice of royal incest, shocking to us, was a cornerstone of New Kingdom succession. It kept the bloodline, which was considered literally divine, undiluted and concentrated power within the immediate family. It prevented ambitious noble families from marrying into the monarchy and making a claim to the throne. For Meritamen, marriage was not about love or companionship. It was her ultimate duty to the dynasty. She was a vessel for the next generation of divine rulers. The affection and partnership we see in depictions of royal couples like Akhenaten and Nefertiti or Rameses and Nefertari may well have been real, but it grew out of a union founded entirely on political and religious necessity, not personal choice. As the sun began to set, casting the sky in hues of orange and purple over the Theban hills, the palace would stir in preparation for the evening. This was the time for the main meal, a feast that was both a family gathering and a state function. The great halls would be lit with smoking oil lamps, their light glinting off the gold leaf on the columns and the jewelry of the guests. The air would be thick with the smell of roasting meat, incense, and the lotus flowers adorning the tables. The feast would be a grander affair than the midday meal. Dancers would perform, their bodies weaving intricate patterns in the flickering light. Musicians would play lutes, harps, and lyres, and a storyteller might recount the epic tales of the gods or the heroic deeds of the pharaoh's ancestors. Meritamen would be present, again playing her part. She would engage in polite, careful conversation, eat from the fine pottery and golden dishes set before her, and sip wine from a delicate lotus-shaped chalice. It was a performance of effortless grace and power, a carefully choreographed display of the immense wealth and culture of the Egyptian court. But all performances must end. As the evening wound down, Meritamen would retire to her chambers, once again attended by her ladies. The elaborate ritual of the morning was now reversed. The heavy, heart wig would be lifted off and placed on its own stand. The broad collar and jewelry would be carefully removed and stored in ornate wooden chests. The fine linen dress would be taken away to be laundered and repleated. The layers of makeup would be cleansed from her skin with oils and creams. This process was a slow stripping away of the divine symbol, revealing the young woman beneath. Dressed in a simple linen shift, she was once again a person rather than an icon. She might share some quiet, more personal conversation with her most trusted attendant, a rare moment of unguarded intimacy in a life lived entirely in public. Before sleep, a small offering or a quiet prayer might be made to a household deity, perhaps Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of childbirth and protection, or Bes, the dwarf god who watched over women and children. These were the personal, intimate gods, a contrast to the great, imposing state gods of the temples. Finally, she would lie down on her simple bed, placing her neck on the cool curve of her headrest. Her chamber would be quiet now, save for the distant sound of a palace guard's footsteps or the chirping of crickets in the garden. Her day was over. It was a day of immense luxury, lived in surroundings of unimaginable beauty and wealth. She never knew hunger, cold, or hard physical labor, but it was also a day of profound constraint. Every hour was scheduled, every action was prescribed, every word was weighed. Her body was not her own, it was a billboard for the dynasty. Her future was not hers to choose, it was a strategic asset of the state. She was a princess, a living goddess, a future queen. But she was also a prisoner of her own divinity, her life a relentless cycle of ritual and duty, played out on the grandest stage in the ancient world. As she closed her eyes, her dreams were likely not of grand romance or adventure, but perhaps of a simple, quiet moment of unobserved peace. And as the cool night air of the desert drifted through her window, she slept, gathering her strength to rise at dawn and become the princess all over again. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps spare a thought for our Meritamen. Her world of gold and lapis was also one of ironclad duty. The image of the pampered, idle princess is a fantasy. The reality was a life of rigorous training, political pressure, and sacred responsibility. It was a life of purpose, certainly, but a purpose defined entirely by others. It reminds us that even in the most gilded of cages, the bars are still bars. Now let the story fade. Let the silence of your room hold you. The past is quiet now. It's time to rest. Sleep well.